You know, it's really striking how fast things can change. And right now, U.S. agriculture in 2025, well, it's going through a pretty huge transformation.
It really is. We're seeing shifts that ripple all the way through the system.
Yeah, from the farmer right out in the field to, well, eventually what ends up in your shopping cart.
A defining period of adjustment, definitely, across the whole sector.
And a big, big driver of all this change, these 2025 tariffs. We're digging into a really insightful report for this deep dive. It's from Cognitive Market Research.
Ah, yes. That report does a good job looking at how these tariffs are, shaking things up.
It really lays out the impact, doesn't it? We've got this market research analysis looking at disruptions, cost pressures.
And crucially, the strategies businesses are starting to use to cope, the innovative responses.
Exactly. So our mission here isn't to bury you in data points.
No, no.
It's more about pulling out those key takeaways, what you really need to grasp about what's happening right now.
Sort of a clearer picture of the dynamics at play.
Yeah, think of it like that, your shortcut to understanding it all. So where should we start? I mean, the tariffs themselves seem like the obvious place.
Good starting point.
Right.
What are the main ones hitting agriculture right now?
Okay, well, one that really jumps out is this 25% tariff on agricultural machinery. Tractors, harvesters, that kind of thing.
Right. Big ticket items.
Huge. And it turns out a lot of the parts, the components, they come from China.
Oh, so that tariff hits hard.
Yeah, the American Farm Bureau Federation reckons it could push up capital spending for farmers by 12 to 18%.
Wow, that's substantial, especially given how capital-intensive farming already is.
Isn't it just a real hit to their operating costs?
It really highlights that global connection, doesn't it? Even for something seemingly domestic.
Totally. Then there are also tariffs on fertilizers and agrochemicals, around 34%.
And where are those coming from?
China and Morocco, primarily. And get this, those two used to supply nearly 40% of U.S. fertilizer imports.
40%. Okay, so a tariff that high is bound to cause some serious waves.
You bet. The report says farmers in the Midwest and Southeast are feeling it most. Higher per acre costs.
Essential inputs, too, for yield. So those costs, they have to go somewhere eventually, potentially impacting crop prices down the line.
And it's not just inputs. There are tariffs on processed foods, too, 10–15%.
Like what specifically?
Things like packaged meats, canned fruits, stuff you buy ready-made.
Okay, so that puts the squeeze on the food manufacturers, those using imported packaging or ingredients.
Exactly. They've got to manage those extra costs somehow, absorb them, maybe pass them on.
Which could change what we see on the shelves or what we pay.
But it's not a one-way street, is it? We're seeing retaliatory tariffs now.
Right. Other countries hitting back.
China, the EU, Brazil. They've put duties on U.S. exports, soybeans, pork, corn, wheat, dairy.
And some of those are steep, I recall.
Some up to 120%. That basically slams the door shut on major markets for those U.S. products.
Yeah, that kind of retaliation is incredibly damaging for export-reliant sectors. It just cuts off access.
And we're seeing the fallout already. The report points to domestic oversupply building up.
Because they can't export it.
Right. So prices collapse. Soybeans and corn are down, 12–15% since April 2024?
That's a huge drop.
And farmers are stuck paying more for storage because they can't move the product. It's tough.
So these broad impacts are hitting different parts of agriculture differently, obviously. Let's maybe break it down. Row crop farmers first. Midwest.
Okay, yeah. So corn, soybean, wheat producers, they're really feeling the pressure.
How so specifically?
Well, those Chinese retaliatory tariffs directly hit their export income. That was a big slice of the pie for many.
Right. Less revenue coming in.
And like we said, their input costs, fertilizers, pesticides are going up at the same time.
It's a real double whammy, squeezing margins from both sides.
Exactly. Narrows the profit margin significantly. Creates real concern.
Forces some hard choices about planting, potentially affecting overall output.
And some are definitely looking at alternatives now. The report mentions farmers exploring crops like sorghum, chickpeas, barley.
Diversifying away from the tariff-hit crops.
Yeah, where the traditional exports aren't maybe as viable. And they're using data analytics, too.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
To try and find new markets, looking at places like South Asia, Africa, Latin America.
That's smart, using data to find new opportunities. Sorghum, for instance, is more drought-resistant than corn, right? So that could be attractive with climate shifts, too.
Good point. Okay, what about dairy and livestock? They're facing challenges too, right?
Big time. Those export declines, especially with China and the EU putting up barriers, It's leading to stockpiles.
And processing plants not running at full steam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Underutilized capacity. The National Milk Producers Federation said dairy exports dropped 17% in just the first quarter of 2025.
17%. That's a huge hit in just 3 months.
It really is a major contraction. And then add in the higher feed costs.
Ah, yes. Tariffs on imported grains, vitamins.
It just adds another layer of financial strain for those producers.
So, like the crop farmers, they're also looking for new markets.
Definitely. Market studies are underway, exploring potential in Vietnam, Indonesia, Nigeria, trying to adapt to this new reality.
Okay, shifting gears. Fruits and vegetables, what are their specific headaches?
Well, losing market access is a big one. Retaliatory quotas, even inspection slowdowns in places like the EU and Canada.
Creates bottlenecks.
Exactly. And then operational costs are up too. Tariffs on packaging, refrigeration equipment.
Things absolutely critical for perishable goods.
Right. Plus, the uncertainty around customs and tariffs leads to delays. And delays mean spoilage.
Which is incredibly costly with high-value, time-sensitive produce.
So optimizing that cold chain logistics, the temperature-controlled supply line, and maybe focusing more on regional markets seem like key strategies.
Makes sense. And the food processors, the packaging companies.
They're seeing costs jump too. The report suggests a 10–14% rise in unit costs.
Why specifically?
Mostly tariffs on processing equipment, food additives, packaging materials. A lot sourced from Asia and the EU. Puts them in a tough spot. Absorb the cost or pass it on to consumers.
And risk impacting demand. So they're evaluating suppliers, maybe looking at contract manufacturing elsewhere, Central America.
Understandable responses, yeah. Trying to find ways around those costs.
Even the logistics side, trucking, warehousing, they're feeling it too.
Oh, absolutely. The ripple effects. Slower exports mean goods sit longer, need more warehousing.
So they have to rethink routes, strategies.
They're looking at new inland routes, more rail maybe, reassessing inventory, focusing perhaps on smaller second-tier cities for distribution. It's a whole system adjustment.
Okay, let's focus a bit on China's role. It's complex, right? They aren't the biggest agricultural exporter to the U.S. overall.
No, that's typically Mexico, Canada, Brazil, Chile. Our neighbors and other major producers hold those spots.
But China is still really significant in specific areas.
That's the key distinction, yes. Not the highest total volume, but critical for certain supply chains.
So what kind of things are we talking about? Where is China a key supplier?
The report flags several categories. Things like processed fruits and vegetables, various agrochemicals, animal feed vitamins, human supplements,
Okay.
food additives that go into lots of processed foods, certain seafood items, think garlic, apple juice concentrate, specific mushrooms, pet food ingredients, tilapia, even some food preservatives.
Right. So for those specific inputs, they're a crucial source. And the tariffs hit hard there.
Precisely. And their influence isn't just direct imports.
How do you mean?
Well, the report notes that other Asian exporters, say Vietnam or Thailand, send processed foods and seafood here,
Okay.
but often using raw materials that originated in China.
Ah, so the tariffs on China create these indirect ripples, affecting businesses that might not even buy directly from China.
Exactly. It's a really interconnected web. Shows you how changes in one place can echo far and wide in the global food system.
So let's talk about the importers. The companies bringing these goods into the U.S., what's the direct impact on them and the supply side generally?
Well, the most obvious is higher input costs. No surprise there.
How much higher are we talking?
The report estimates for some categories, fertilizers, feed additives, vitamins, processed food components, costs are up anywhere from 15 to 22%.
15 to 22%, that is a serious jump.
It really is. And we're seeing that translate. The report mentions higher prices for things like Chinese garlic, certain mushrooms.
Which affects restaurants, food manufacturers.
And potentially what you pay at the checkout, yeah.
And it's not just cost, right? It's making planning harder.
Hugely.
Yeah.
Inventory planning is much trickier. Tariff compliance, customs delays, rerouting shipments, it all adds up to longer lead times.
Creates uncertainty, potential shortages of raw materials.
Exactly. Businesses that rely on predictable, seasonal supply chains are facing real challenges.
And aquaculture is feeling it too. Shrimp feed, tilapia stock.
Yes, rising costs there as well, which can affect seafood availability and price down the line.
So companies are trying to shift sourcing, looking at India, Indonesia, Latin America.
They are. The report highlights that shift. But, it's not easy. It's not like flipping a switch.
No, I imagine not. What are the hurdles?
Logistics, obviously.
Yeah.
Language barriers, potentially. And crucially, ensuring these new suppliers meet stringent U.S. quality and safety standards, phytosanitary compliance.
Takes time and investment.
Right. It slows the transition and often means companies need more working capital to hold bigger buffer stocks, just in case. Reconfiguring these complex supply chains takes time and effort.
Okay, so with all this disruption, how is market research actually helping businesses navigate this? Is it becoming more important?
Oh, absolutely essential now. In this kind of volatile environment, shifting prices, changing trade rules, relying on data isn't just nice to have, it's often critical for survival.
Can you give some concrete examples? How are companies using it right now?
Sure, one big area is supplier mapping and country risk evaluation.
Okay, what does that involve?
It means using research to identify and really vet alternative sourcing countries, looking for lower risk options.
Yeah.
Maybe Argentina for soy, Indonesia for spices, India for pulses or rice, Turkey for dried fruits.
But it's more than just finding who grows what, right?
Much more. The research has to dig deep, assess their shipping infrastructure, their food safety track record, phytosanitary compliance against sustainability practices, even the geopolitical stability of the country.
You need confidence they can deliver reliably. Quality, quantity, on time.
Exactly. That's crucial.
Makes sense. What else? How else is research helping?
Input cost and commodity pricing analysis is another key one. Tariffs have thrown traditional pricing into chaos.
So research helps track that.
Sophisticated research, yes.
Yeah.
Tracking the fluctuating prices of agro-inputs, linking them to global factors. This helps companies negotiate contracts better, manage cash flow more effectively, vital for farmers with tight cycles.
Right, getting ahead of potential price spikes for things they need to buy. Understanding the drivers.
Precisely. Then there's supply chain optimization. With tariffs making some routes less viable, companies are looking at nearshoring.
Bringing supply chains closer, like Colombia, Peru, Mexico.
Exactly. Market research helps evaluate if that's feasible, looking at port efficiency, warehousing costs, cold chain capability, local incentives, all of it.
Finding more resilient, maybe more cost-effective routes. What about the consumer end?
Understanding consumer trends and price sensitivity is vital, especially in sectors like organics or pet nutrition, where imports are common.
Because tariffs mean higher prices, potentially.
Right. So research uses things like elasticity modeling, how demand changes with price and social listening, tracking online chatter.
To see how consumers might react.
Yeah. Will they accept the higher price, switch to alternatives, change brands? This informs pricing and product strategies.
Understanding that breaking point on price.
Exactly. And finally, regulatory monitoring and scenario planning. Trade rules change constantly, pesticide standards, import quotas.
Research helps track that.
Yes. And scenario planning helps prepare for disruptions. What if there's a port shutdown, a disease outbreak? It helps build flexible plans.
Being ready for the unexpected sounds essential right now.
Hey.
So, how are companies putting this into action? What are the actual strategic responses we're seeing?
We're seeing significant supply network reengineering. The report gives examples. U.S. organic importers shifting herb and spice sourcing from China to India, Sri Lanka.
Okay.
Aquaculture firms building new partnerships in Ecuador, Vietnam. Tangible shifts in sourcing.
Right, real changes in where they get their stuff.
And the big players, companies like Cargill, ADM, they're leaning heavily on analytics, even AI.
For what? Risk management.
For deeper insights into supply chain risks, yeah. Managing that complexity. We're also seeing more investment in local farming partnerships, domestic greenhouses, preservation tech to cut down on transport needs.
Interesting. A move towards maybe more localized, resilient models.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And on the export side, companies are rethinking portfolios, focusing on tariff-exempt goods, maybe.
And diversifying where they sell.
Actively diversifying destinations, yes. And leveraging preferential trade programs where they can.
So the big picture seems to be success means being agile, operationally nimble.
Combined with really deep current market intelligence, that combination is key.
The companies that can anticipate changes, adapt sourcing, pricing, marketing quickly.
Those are the ones likely to navigate this successfully, maybe even thrive.
And speaking of shifts, let's just reinforce that with a quick fact from the report. It really highlights this. A significant number of U.S. food and ag businesses are actively moving their sourcing for specialty ingredients and key agro inputs away from China.
Where are they looking instead?
Towards places like India, Vietnam, and Turkey. It's a really clear sign of that broader supply chain diversification we've been talking about.
A concrete example. It brings it home.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it's just undeniable from the Cognitive Market Research Report. These 2025 tariffs are having a huge, complex impact on U.S. agriculture.
Yeah, from input costs to export markets to the strategic shifts companies are making across the board. Farmers, processors, everyone.
And understanding these shifts, these fundamental changes, it feels pretty crucial.
It really is. Not just for people in the industry, but for anyone interested in, well, the stability and future of our food supply chain.
And it does make you wonder, doesn't it, about the longer term picture for global ag trade. Will these sourcing shifts stick? Will the U.S. sector ultimately become more resilient, more self-reliant?
Or
Or,
will the higher costs and disruptions just end up hitting consumers hardest in the long run?
exactly, definitely something to keep thinking about.